Welcome, everyone. This is the Rise Above Heartless Materialism podcast. This is the first official episode. The first unofficial episode was my episode with Alejandro Rodriguez, and he was interviewing me about heart color, my modern Technicolor process that I've developed over like the past 10 years. But I decided, I know some great people and we have some great conversations. So it's like, well, why not just like start a podcast and just talk about things that are, somewhat related to the theme of rising above heartless materialism, which heartless materialism is basically like the material world only. There's no like real emotions. It's just chemicals in the brain. It doesn't really matter. And there's no supernatural, there's no intangible world. So we're really kind of like challenging that worldview a little bit and really bringing a more full human perspective. So today I have with me Laurence Gonzaga. Am I pronouncing your last name correctly?
Yeah, that's close enough.
Close enough. All right. Close enough for me, Barrero, Okay. So yeah, Laurence is a teacher. You teach psychology, is that correct? And then you also have a few other occupations. Is that right?
Yeah, my main work is managed healthcare. I'll say that.
Okay.
That's a good way
to
to put
have
it.
that technical term. But then Laurence also you kind of dabble in theology a little bit. You really talk about things. You kind of have an ear to the pulse of the Catholic zeitgeist. What's going on out there, and particularly you are versed in the traditionalist Catholic movement, which is one of the things I want to talk about today. I grew up trad myself. I grew up attending the FSSP apostolate in Lincoln. But during my 20s, I had kind of like a little bit of a wrestling. I didn't fall away from the faith, but I maybe attended the Novus Ordo a little more, and didn't attend Latin Mass exclusively. And I just like answered a lot of questions. So I kind of distanced myself a little bit from the trad movement. Now I'm more comfortable with trad, but I would call myself trad adjacent, to borrow the term coined by Cale Zeldin, who was a great gentleman. So I attend Latin Mass a couple times a month, and then I attend the local Novus Ordo a couple times a month. But I live in the Diocese of Lincoln, and they're like the most conservative in the country. So it's easy for me to say Novus Ordo. Okay, if I was in a place like Chicago or maybe Los Angeles, I might be a little more like, oh yeah, no, I'm going all trad. So, but you were trad. You had a period in your life where you were very traditional, and now you've kind of like, evened out a little bit, I guess, if you want to say it that way. But can you tell us a bit about yourself? What do you do? What was your faith journey? Trad, and now like kind of. Oh, where would you say you are? I guess now.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a term for it, but I'll just say, just a brief. I don't know if it's gonna be brief, but it'll be just be an overview. So I was raised Catholic, and those who are very protective of terms might not consider it as such. I was culturally Catholic. Let's put it that way.
Mhm.
Philippines is a very culturally Catholic place. To what degree do they, like, by and large, understand the Catholic doctrines and what is it, what are the teachings of the church? That might be a different story. So I was culturally Catholic. I knew the prayers, I knew the practices. I went to the church, Novus Ordo, in my early years, until I moved here, immigrated here, and when I was 5. So that was the Los Angeles area. My grandparents were the ones who pretty much raised me, and they were conservative politically, but I don't know if they would have understood the whole spectrum of liturgical and doctrinal infighting and stuff within the Catholic Church. I don't think that was never really their interest, and I don't think it's really big in the Philippine community anyway. Even the ones who are more conservative, I don't think they're like clamoring for the Latin Mass, let's say, or whatever. Although I do have a lot of friends who are. attracted to the Latin Mass, who are Filipino. Um, yeah, so I was nominally a Catholic after I moved here. We went to church, but it wasn't a regular thing. So when I was in high school, I think I just kind of decided, hey, the kind of answers that religion had, well, the kind of answers that religion had for questions that science actually answered, from my secular, education, there was really no need. I didn't feel like there was a need for religion, so I stopped kind of practicing, I guess you can say. And I was an atheist, explicitly in my late teen years.
Mhm.
And I remember I'd wear this shirt called, it's a band called Bad Religion. So if you know anything about Bad Religion, their symbol is a cross that's like crossed out like Ghostbusters. So I
Mhm.
would I would proudly wear that shirt at my university, just to, I don't know, get a rise out of folks. Who knows? I mean,
Yeah.
in those days, you had to be in person troll. There was no such thing as online trolling, so I guess you can say it's it's ancient trolling. And I enjoyed that. I would go to Bible studies and like challenge them, with their doctrines and all this other stuff. The problem of evil and that kind of stuff. Until I took a philosophy class, and the professor later found out was actually an atheist, but he was teaching Thomas Aquinas. He was teaching the Anselm's ontological argument for the existence of God. Both sides. He was trying to be balanced, and in the course of that one semester, I came to some conclusion that, it's not irrational to believe in the existence of God. And that kind of got the ball rolling
Mhm.
to me discovering apologetics and discovering, all that stuff. And so I briefly became Catholic again, came back to the Catholic Church because now I believed. I had an ascent of faith, you could say. But there was also challenges from Protestants. So my first Christian book, I guess you can say, besides the Bible, was the Catholic Catechism. And so I was reading through that, and then there was, Protestant articles out there saying, hey, the Catholic Church officially teaches that you become God. And it has a reference from the Catechism of the Catholic Church, and I looked it up, and there it was. It said something like, God became man so that man may become God, which was a quote from, I believe, John of the Cross. And I was like, there it is. Catholics believe you become a god, just like the Mormons believe. And so that was like a 6-month period where I was a Protestant, and practically trying to convert all my friends from Catholicism to Protestantism. And then I came across Catholic apologetics that started answering all the questions. Right, I have an uncle that was a Catholic deacon for the Novus Ordo, and he didn't want to answer my questions necessarily. He just pointed to the other room, and he said, "There's a stack of books over in the other room. Go read those books." So I got a copy of it. It was my first apologetics little textbook answering all the questions of Protestantism. And that convinced me to become Catholic again. So ever since that, what was that, 2004, 2003, 2004, I've been a revert to Catholicism. Fast forward to 2005, my first Latin Mass with the SSPX, the Society of St. Pius X. And it was a little weird, but eventually I got into it and fell in love with it. And, and all the arguments that come along with it, all of the apologetics from their books, from the SSPX books, from Michael Davies, and all the traditionalist stuff. I read, anything and everything I could get my hands on, and buy and read, and I became a dyed in the wool, I guess you can say, Latin Mass only kind of Catholic for a period of
Mhm.
time. I was Una Voce president for 3 years. That's Una Voce is a organization that has chapters all across the United States, but also in other countries. It's a there's an international Una Voce, then there's an American Una Voce, and then there's chapters all throughout you know the United States, and I was one of the presidents there for a period of time. So that's how, I got involved with a lot of the promotion and the support. And we actually started a Latin Mass that lasted about 7 years in Paris, California, Perris, Paris. And so that's one minor claim to fame, I guess you can say. And I don't know how much else you need to know about that, but at some point you know, I lapsed out of that community,
Hmm.
and for the last 15 years, I guess you can say, it was somewhere between not going to mass for various reasons, and then coming back about 7 or 8, 9 years ago, and just being sort of mostly conservative, but Novus Ordo. I mean, conservative can mean a lot of things for different people.
Yeah.
So I'll just say that what I mean by conservative is I believe what the Catholic Church teaches. I didn't question any kind of moral claims or moral teachings
Mhm.
of the church. I didn't question any doctrines of the church. I would just say that's, some would say Orthodox Catholic, but even then, people don't like those kinds of qualifiers. Um, so that could mean anything for anybody. So
Yeah. So
does
you've
that
had,
answer your question? I know it's
yeah,
a
no,
lot of
that's
words.
great. Thanks for sharing your
Okay.
story. There were some things about you I didn't know there, and I'm really, really loved hearing it. So you've really had a wealth and a diversity of being immersed in different perspectives, and
Yeah, you could say that. I mean,
that's
I'll add.
not everybody has that sort of thing. Like I think, well, at least here in the Midwest, a lot of times you don't either you don't question your roots or you go move to the big city and then who knows what happens there.
Right.
But I know
Mhm.
for myself, like I was probably the farthest away I got from my roots were like, okay, how much assent to the or how much trust do we place in the mainstream church? That's basically like the
Mhm.
farthest,
Mhm.
asking those kind of questions. So yeah. So right now you're attending the Anglican ordinariate, is that right? Or is that like a once in a while thing?
Yeah, that's every once in a while. I bought a house closer to it before I helped the establishment in some way of that Anglican ordinariate. The priest,
Oh, really?
the priest at the time, consulted with me about the local conservative-ish Catholic community
Mhm.
and was looking for a place to have the ordinariate. And so I had conversations with him. I mean, I didn't have a lot of, I didn't help build the church or anything. I'm just saying that
Right.
I was involved in that kind of discussion and trying to figure out the local climate, right? Because he wasn't really aware of the sort of Catholic cultural nuances going on in the region. So anyway, so I
Yeah.
was involved with that. I was at his ordination, so I've been,
Gotcha.
sort of connected to him since he was reordained, if you will, from the
Mhm.
Anglican Church, and now he's a Catholic. So yeah, I tend. It's 30 miles away. I mean, I'm one of those that I personally believe that you kind of try. You should really put down roots where you are, right? So
Mhm.
wherever God plants you, you really should be spending most of your time liturgically and ecclesiologically in that general area, because the further you are going to liturgy, I think that it puts a strain on how much you can give to the church.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, I've actually never attended the Anglican ordinariate. I would have loved to. I've heard it described as kind of like it's kind of like the Latin Mass in English, kind of. Would you say that's kind of a fair assessment? At least there's like there's a sense of like beauty of language that
mhm,
the Novus Ordo doesn't always have. It's a little more direct and stripped down, whereas
right.
Latin Mass and the Anglican ordinariate, just really has like that richness. Some might call it superfluous, but
Mhm.
it's really verbose. So anyway, what I wanted to talk about today was basically really wanted to get to the truth of the Latin Mass movement. So there's lovers, there's haters. Sometimes it feels like there are people who say, well, the Latin Mass movement has nothing good in it and can't do any good. And then sometimes it feels like some of the actual trads are like, yeah, well, there's no problems with the Latin Mass movement. We're not here to glorify or vilify the Latin Mass movement. But I really want to kind of pick your brain and get your
Mhm.
perspective on what is the Latin Mass movement. What what are some of like the subcultures? And what do you see are like some of its like noble aspirations versus maybe like some of its, dare we say, like skeletons in the closet? So
Mhm.
um,
Well, that's you have a 1 hour time limit here. I heard, but I don't think we can really overturn any of these all the rocks that you're wanting to turn over here.
Well, pick your
And
favorite ones then.
I will preface it by saying this, and besides, anybody who knows me on social media will get my knee-jerk reactions to a lot of different groups and ways of thinking. And I don't know if you could describe me as a contrarian, but I do like to present the balance of extreme positions when I see them, when I observe them, because
Mhm.
often it's those extremes that I really get worried about or hesitate with, because people when people are in extreme sides of any kind of subject or topic or movement, um, they have blinders. They have cognitive blinders. They have emotional blinders, and
Mhm.
they oftentimes are not willing to give a fair hearing to an individual they disagree with. That's just my observation, my opinion. Been there, done that. I was that person myself. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I, that's my own history. So we do have a tendency, because when we're passionate about any particular subject, we believe we're right. So it just
Mhm.
makes sense, right? So I that's why I want to preface it by saying that. And whenever I come across a very strong, passionate opinion about anti-traditional Latin Mass, anti-Novus Ordo, or whatever, um, I sometimes like to ask the question, "Who hurt you?"
Yeah.
Because I have observed some people within my own social media connections, like a very strong anti-traditional Latin Mass. They'll say, "I grew up that way. This is I'll never go back to that." I'm like, somebody hurt you.
Mhm.
Somebody did something to you. And so when I asked that question, I mean, out it came. I know it is anecdotal, but that person basically said, "Oh, this person ruined my life." And there's okay, so it's that person. It's that person who, in your mind, is sort of this super exemplar of the traditional Latin Mass, and
Mhm.
you're really reacting to that person.
Yeah.
So, but it's not everybody, and so it goes both ways too. It's someone how do they find themselves in the ordinariate? How do they find themselves in the traditional Latin Mass? And when you listen to their stories, it's always the same kind of story. They have the glass, and they had the altar. You couldn't kneel for communion. You couldn't do this, and they had altar girls, and it's like the same song and dance. Like, why? How did you get socialized to hate those things? It's like, if you're raised into that Novus Ordo culture, like, how do you know anything different?
Mm.
Right? I mean, you didn't know
Yeah.
anything different. I was raised in that stuff. I was like, why would I have ever questioned altar girls? Why would I have ever questioned the fact that they used glass in the 90s? Like, I wouldn't have thought, because nobody taught me you had to use sacred vessels with precious metals. I didn't know that stuff. So when people sing their song about how they had their journey into traditional circles, it all sounds strangely similar. It's the
Mhm.
same list of 27 things they hate about the Nova Sword or whatever it is,
Mhm.
but they didn't start off hating the Nova. I mean, they were raised in that. So somehow they came across a book, they listened to a talk, they liked, something that Scott Hahn said, or somebody shared with them a CD or a tape or whatever it was, and it made a lot of sense to them, and it resonated with their own personality. And it just so happens that person was, I don't know, Michael Davies, or it just so happened to be Dietrich von Hildebrand,
Mhm.
or any of the classical names that the older trads would know from the 80s and 90s and 2000s. A lot of the newer ones, it's a different breed. So I don't know how to describe the newer apologists for the traditional Latin Mass. I feel like maybe I'm just a boomer myself, a Catholic boomer, but I prefer the sort of the classical traditionalist authors, and their and yes, the modern ones, they have really well researched books with 1,000 footnotes and all this other stuff. But there's just something about the pre-social media culture in general
Mhm.
that I prefer those apologists, those Catholic apologists. I prefer those traditionalists more. I have more respect for those authors, and I think it's because they actually went to real libraries.
Yeah.
You know
They
what I
had
mean?
they had they had longer attention spans, so they can be more thorough. Whereas I myself am guilty of the social media culture of like, well, if I can't finish it in like 5 minutes, like Substack, I hate Substack because like everything is like a half-hour read, and I'm like,
Mm.
I only want the little soundbite, the little aphorism that changes my world for 15 minutes, So, um,
Yeah, that's me too. I mean, I maybe it's a millennial kind of a thing as well. Um, it's a strange thing, right? Because that's the kind of stuff I'd like to consume nowadays,
mhm,
but it's not the what I used to consume in the
yeah,
mid 2000s because
that
there's nothing available. There's no social
yeah,
media.
that is one of the very sad casualties, I think, of the rise of social media. Is just really that. I mean, it's common. I'm not saying anything new. Like just the dopamine and just everything quicker and quicker. And I think that way I know myself included, is like I want now. I more want the shortcuts that get me the gratification of completion rather than like, no, like just wait, you know go through the grind first for a long period of time, and then at the end you're really going to get something really beautiful out of it, and that's
Mhm.
going to make that sort of passion, if you will, that's going to make it all worth it, because you're really going to get it in the end. But social media is like, nope, I just want it's so easy to get that hit. But anyway, I want to back up on what you said about woundedness. That's such a great insight. I actually experienced that myself. When I went to, I won't say which parish, but there was an FSSP parish, not the one in Lincoln. Um, and at the time, I had a freelance video job, and I was like, they talked about bringing me on full time. It never happened, and now I'm like, well, what am I going to do? I don't want to go work for secular companies. Am I actually good enough to work for secular companies? At least if they don't know me already. And so people at my parish are like, oh, well, you should just like get a job in IT. And I'm like, nah, sorry, no, I'm not really interested in IT. And they got really insistent. And I put two and two together. I'm like, why are they so insistent? Like, oh, because I'm not making enough money to get married. Oh, if I don't get it one of the three sacraments, I'm gonna go to hell. So for the longest time, I was like, that's the trads. The trads are anti me because I'm not married. And
Mhm.
so that really made me rather antagonistic towards that. But ever since I lately have come to peace with that, I've got a really great spiritual director. I've really worked out, that for now God wants me to be single. Um, Maybe in the future that could change, but at least now, like, that's the path. And so, like, that just that certainty, and then also we've been going through healing wounds, and so now I'm like, I'm not anti-trad. I don't know if I like agree with everything that's kind of like the core beliefs, if you will. But I also I don't lose any sleep over it. I don't like spend my time trying to present arguments for or against any of it. But anyway, so yeah. Um, what do you think are some of these subcultures? Because a lot of times you say, oh, well, this is the kind of person that trads usually are, and you can think, yes, I've made a fair assessment of like some really broad
Mhm.
trends that are fairly representative of the bulk of the population. But then you always get that one, two, three people you meet in real life, and they're just like a complete departure from that. And you're like, oh, okay, so what is it? To borrow Matt Walsh's phrase, what is a trad?
What is a trad? Um, well, okay.
It's a big question,
So
isn't it?
that's a very interesting. Yeah. So yeah, what is a trad? I think at its like, I'm trying to think of a definition that's going to capture every single instance that I've experienced of a trad, an individual
Okay.
that considers themselves a traditionalist. I think I, I think how people intellectualize their identity as traditionalists is not quite the way I'd like to go. I think I'm more interested in how did they become trad?
Mm,
Not so much are they trad, right? Because it's not like a set of principles or something like that. Some trads will say, "Oh, I'm just Catholic." Yeah, but some progressives say the same thing. So
right.
it means it's not a helpful thing to just say, "I'm just Catholic." Well, yes, we're all Catholic, but there's all flavors. I like to say we're all different kinds of flavors.
Hmm.
There's an old saying, what is it? In all things that are essential, right? Unity. In all things that are non-essential, diversity, right? So that's one criticism, and maybe this is the reason why a lot of trads go over to the Eastern Orthodox. I've heard from the Eastern Orthodox directly from my own ears. They said, the thing about Catholicism is there's like Franciscan Catholicism, there's Jesuit type Catholicism, there's Benedictine spirituality, there's all the Carmelite, there's all styles of spirituality, and there's different like all those flavors, but there's only like one style of orthodoxy.
Hmm.
And what they meant is not like Russian versus this or the national type stuff, but there isn't like a flavor of it. There isn't like a saint that they follow and they dress a certain way and their kind of prayer sound. They all pray. I mean, from my experience of all the Orthodox I've been to, they all pray very similarly.
Hmm.
There isn't like a flavor of Benedictine Novus, or you know what I mean, like versus a Carmelite Novus or something like that. So I think traditionalists are those who are for whatever reason attracted to certainty,
Hmm.
attracted to beauty, the arts, maybe like ceremony, like they like the ceremoniousness of things. They like the kind of folks who are, I mean, in the secular culture, they're attracted to Gregorian chant, but they weren't raised Christian. Like, what is it about? And
Hmm.
they're equally attracted to Buddhist chant and Muslim chant. Like they're attracted to things that seem ancient,
Yeah.
right? Because they're that's probably a Jungian kind of a thing, this attraction to something, you know, that has lasted and has been tested through time. And it's not transitory. It's not pop music. It's not, right?
Hmm.
So you get what I'm saying? I think that's what a trad essentially starts off as, is they have this natural attraction to those kinds of um, characteristics, and then somehow they come to realize at some point there's something different than the Novus Ordo. There's other options of the Novus Ordo. So they might not like the kind of what would you say, the tentativeness of typical Novus Ordo, right? They don't like the jokes. They don't like the casualness of it. So
Yeah.
then they go find something more serious. So they find an Orthodox parish down the street, and then they go to the Eucharistic Adoration Chapel and they find some little pamphlets, and they find the little prayer cards, and people who go to um, adoration pretty often kind of dovetail, right? Even though it's a Novus Ordo parish, it kind of dovetails with these folks who like to go to Latin Mass and stuff too. So they'll leave little breadcrumbs. All right. So I don't
Hmm.
know if that's your experience. Or you said you were raised in the traditional movement, but
I
I
was
think
raised in it. Yeah.
I think a lot of folks who come into the Latin Mass, who have done so in the last 40 years, they pick up these breadcrumbs and they'll look at the back of the card. What is this? Our Lady of the Rosary Library, blah blah blah. And they go Google it and they find out. Well, the reality of it is they're like Saint Vacantus or whatever it is. But
Hmm.
they somehow they get a breadcrumb that leads them to a tape, a book, a thing, or whatever it is, some kind of media where they just are more curious, and then they
Hmm.
start getting socialized into um, that subculture. I mean, for me anyway, I was doing apologetics on Yahoo chat in the mid 2000s, and that's all I was focused on, apologetics. But a lot of the apologists that were on that chat room, they were like always talking about this Latin mass, and I was like, what is this Latin mass stuff? Why would anybody want to go worship in Latin? And so I Google, well, in those days you Yahooed it, right? There's no Google. I
Hmm.
Yahooed it, and then I found out in my own city, Colton, California, there was a chapel of the society, And I didn't know the difference between a chapel and a church and what
Yeah.
SSP. I didn't know. I didn't have no clue. So I went to the thing, and that's what, like I already mentioned the story after that. But that was my entree into it. And at the time, I was a life teen leader, I guess you could say. I
Mm,
was in the life teen movement or the life teen whatever, and I did the retreats. I was a catechist for confirmation. I was all that stuff. So I was, you know, knee deep in the Novus Ordo and all that. I went to mass on the beach. You know, that was a big thing. You would have mass on the beach. Like today, I would pretty much condemn that kind of concept, right? They still happen sometimes,
yeah.
but
Yeah.
even now,
Unless you're
that's still
unless
an
you're like
alternative.
World War II, Beach of Normandy, and
Yeah,
you
there's
just
no
cleared out the
reason.
Germans, and before you move out, you have a mass.
True.
Aside from that, like yeah, but we have churches for a reason.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And there was literally at that mass on the beach, there was a church 100 feet away at Huntington Beach. So even though I went to the thing, I was like, why don't we have everybody fully clothed, go to the mass in the morning, right, and get our liturgy done for the day or whatever. And if now we're going to go to the beach, so I would call it mass and then the beach rather than
Yeah,
mass on the beach, because it's not just the people who are not fully clothed. There were other people who are not even there and they're half naked,
yeah.
right? I mean, you would have to put some, you couldn't be in a bathing suit as a Catholic and go to the mass on the beach. You'd there was some bit of rules, but the whole environment,
I
you see
bet there would
somebody,
be.
it just wasn't. Anyway, I don't want to sound like a rat dratty,
Well,
making all these
that's okay
judgments.
with me. You'll have no pushback from me because like that sounds like a terrible idea. Mass on the beach. I mean, maybe we can give them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe it was well intentioned, but like
You know,
just because. Well, that's an interesting discussion, and this is kind of. I think this touches on a bit of the trad novus ordo split. Is Venerable Archbishop Fulton Sheen really made this great distinction. It's so simple. He said the church is basically divided, this is back then, into the go-go's and the come-comes. So we have people who come inside to the church and they just like stay and they never go out. And then we have people who are always going out but never come, into like contemplation and like
mm,
really receiving from the heart. And I've often thought of like the trad novus ordo split, that being one aspect of it. Trads literally, not all of them, but it seems like more than not, there are a lot of trads are like, well, if we just have the Latin mass and everybody will just naturally come to it. And
mhm, mhm.
I mean, that's working now for the young men at least, but I'm not quite sure I fully agree with that. Like St. Paul had to go out. The early apostles had to go out to the world and take the gospel to people. Like it wasn't just like, well, we just build the most beautiful church ever and people just automatically come to it. It's like that didn't happen. Like yes, liturgy is important and you should build the church and make it as beautiful as possible, so that people will stay and get more out of it and be more spiritually receptive. But at the same time, like there's always like, no, we have to. Why is it reducing noise? It says it's reducing noise. Anyway, um, we have to then, after we receive, the grace and everything that God wishes to give us through worship and prayer, then you've got to take that out and make new disciples. But then
Mm,
the Novus Ordo is like, well, no, we just need to like we need to build a bridge and we always go into the other side. We're never, whereas in my opinion, a balanced approach would be, yes, build the bridge. Don't just like cut off the bridge because you're afraid you're going to get contaminated. So yes, build the bridge, but your goal is to be bringing other people to your side of the bridge, not we go out to their side in hopes of bringing them back, but we never come back. We just like,
mm, mm.
we're always like going out and just always like conceding like, okay, well, we can't we can't be ourselves as Catholics. We can't have a Catholic culture. We have to take it to the culture out there. And it's like, okay, fair. Like you have to make connections, you have to make a bridge, but the goal is always like to bring them back and like
Mhm.
to like the memes say, like, yes, Jesus went out to sinners and met with them and all that sort of thing, which is great. But he didn't leave them there. He didn't just sit with them in their sin and say, "Hey, yeah, you're okay." He's like, no, like, here's a better way to live. Come over to my side, and and then um, and then you'll have a better way of living and eventually
Mhm.
have eternal life. So
Mhm.
so that's kind of, sorry, that was a bit of a rant there, but that's kind of my one of my analogies and of the one aspect of the trad Novus Ordo
Mhm.
divide. I think Father Ripperger pointed out that once he had that famous article that I got into in my angry at trad stage. It's like, oh, see, look, Father Ripperger says there's problems with trads. One of the things he said was they like to circle the wagons.
Mhm.
It's very much insular. Like the world's bad out there. We don't want to be contaminated, so we're just gonna like cut off as much as possible from that. And that's an understandable position. Like there are plenty of movies I won't watch. There are I don't particularly care to interact with woke people,
Mhm.
but at the
Mhm.
same time, like I don't know that that's a calling. I suppose it could be for somebody who's like really supposed to be drawn into contemplative prayer. But for the rest of us, like no, actually, like you're supposed to be going out and making more disciples. Like that's, and at the point, and I'm pointing the finger at myself as well. Like at the point, it becomes a comfort thing. It's like it's more comfortable to stay in the church with all these people who are just like me, and we don't have to like stand our ground and sometimes or at least think of inventive ways to like reach people. Like we don't have to engage in that. We just like we all just um stagnate in our own. So we just we come, which is great, but then we never go out. But the Novus Ordo is like always going out, and yeah. So I just wish that along with Fulton Sheen, that we could have both. And some people do that. Like some people, like you get like I'm sure somebody like Father Mike Schmitz. He's a good solid guy. He comes to mind when I think of somebody who probably does both, but that's, I don't know if that's always the case. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that really long monologue of mine?
Yeah, I definitely had the practice of that. So even while I was going to Latin Mass, I was still a catechist for a year or two at the Novus Ordo parish, right?
Mm,
Because that's how I brought a lot of the young leaders of the teachers to go visit, at least visit the Latin Mass. And several of them eventually fell in love with the Latin Mass. They started chanting Gregorian chant. I mean, some of them, they just had no clue something like this existed.
hmm
So that was always my argument. Like, if you're going to just stay in your own little bubble over there, you're not going to bring more people into it.
Yeah.
And so sometimes I question whether they even were interested in the growth of the TLM because, there's also that kind of general Catholic kind of, I like my pew. This is my pew. I don't want it to get crowded. Right.
Yeah.
So it's like on the one hand, yeah, go into the world and baptize all nations, right? But it's just like, yeah, but I don't want to be elbow to elbow with, they already don't want to hold hands in the Nova Cerdo. They don't want to be elbow to elbow with the rest of the trad. So I mean, yeah, there's a lot of dynamics going on there, and I think maybe it is a personality thing, maybe it's a difference between an extrovert and an introvert. I get it
Mm,
when people find the oasis. I think some people just kind of just want to be. They just
yeah.
want, you know what I mean? They don't necessarily want to, oh, I want to bring more people in. They're not evangelistic. Because not everybody's called to be that, right? They don't even have the
Right.
personality for it or the persona for it. I'm reminded though, in reflecting on what you said, I'm reminded of when I was in formation with Opus Dei, and I was never going to join Opus Dei, but I was in the sphere of Opus Dei, and a lot of the ideas that were being shared there was consistent ideas across a lot of the different folks that I knew in Opus Dei. was Saint Paul, right? Saint Paul would say, "Be all things to all men."
Mhm.
Right. That, that could be the topic of an hour-long reflection, right? In any one of
Mhm,
the
mhm,
circles I used to be at. And a big thing, I think, I don't know if it was a Jose Maria Escrivá thing, but the letter of Diognetus, I don't know if you're familiar with the letter of Diognetus, but you can Google it. It's very short. It's from the first century. And basically it says something like the true Christian doesn't look very different from anybody else. They dress like them, they eat and drink like them, they go to parties and things like that. I'm paraphrasing here.
mhm.
The only difference with the Christian is they don't abort their children. Well, it says they don't expose their children. What that means is in those days they would leave the child that they didn't want at the
Mm,
doorstep,
yeah,
be exposed to the elements. They don't basically they're saying they don't murder their children, they don't abort their children, they don't take other people's wives, they don't do. Basically, the notion is you couldn't tell that person really is explicitly a Christian because they look like everybody else. They don't
right,
stand out. They just don't do the sinful stuff that everybody else is doing.
right.
And it also says they don't dress different, right? They blend in. So that's what I think about the, all things to all men. You know, and in those days, I would be like the kind of Catholic who would wear like a pectoral cross, like that was the Bishop of San Bernardino or something. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like,
yeah.
and I joke about it now, but and look, there's some people who love wearing their Benedictine crucifixes.
Mhm,
That's fine. It's just I realized at some point what I felt like I was called to be is like either apologist, evangelist, kind of that share the faith or whatever. But if I just walked everywhere with a pectoral cross, like literally it was that big, always hanging around my neck,
mhm.
it would turn off some people who might need to hear that message.
Yeah,
And I already hear the people, yeah, well, who cares if it's turning them off, whatever they do. No, that's the attitude, right? It's just like, look, what is your goal? If your goal is to bring as much people in as possible, then you would want to be flexible in all having some bit of understanding of sociology or psychology to say that those are the very people that need to hear the gospel, the kind of people who are
right.
turned off by seeing a crucifix around somebody's neck. But if I don't have to not wear it, I just put it underneath my shirt.
Mhm,
And then the crucifix, if you will, when Paul says, "I preach Christ crucified," right? When he's preaching, like it's in his being, it's in the way he is encountering people. He's not preaching Christ crucified by wearing Christ crucified around his neck
mhm,
necessarily, right? So some people are called to have that outer garment, right? Those
mhm,
are the Carmelites, those are the Benedictines, those are the third order whatevers that they wear their stuff. That's fine, that's your charism. But the regular, ordinary doctor and lawyer and teacher or whatever, um, you have an opportunity there by your secular vocation to Christianize your day to day. And that was a big thing with Jose Maria Escrivá, to Christianize your professional work, right?
mhm.
I know you're going to say something, so
Yeah,
take
no,
it.
that's a very good point. I think sometimes when you wear something that's like a very obvious religious identifier, it puts people in the offensive, defensive, or in offensive.
Sure. Nope.
Depending on the person, or maybe offense out of defense. If that makes any sense. But yeah, it puts people on edge. They get angry, and then they might be closed off to any kind of like maybe more. Um, in other words, you're hitting them with. You're reminding them constantly of the entirety of Catholicism. When if you didn't do that, maybe you could just like introduce a little bit here and there, and then be like, oh yeah, that makes total sense. And by the time they put it all
Mhm.
together, it's like, oh well, yeah, actually the sum of all that is the Catholic faith. Oh wow, really? Wow. So there's a point that can be made. I think that's also, we live in a post-Christian age where most people, at least in the West, they know something about Christianity. They're somewhat familiar with it. A lot of them hate it. And so I think it's a lot different than at the time of like St. Paul, when Well, actually, no, it's not. They were literally okay. I've defeated my own point. Disregard. Like they were literally like roasting them alive and throwing them to the lions, and so yeah. So I guess it was more antagonistic then than it is now.
We got it easy now.
Yeah, we got it for
It's
now.
just our feelings. It's just our feelings that get hurt. We
It's
don't
our
get
feelings.
lit on
Well,
fire.
there's also economic sanctions too. Like if I would like if I would go out and shoot any kind of horror movie, or if I would just like um not worry about having to do an ad for like I don't know, Planned Parenthood or something like that, then I'd probably be making more money if I didn't worry about that.
Mm.
Um, but you know what? I, I also want to push back a little bit on the Christians don't look much like other people. Um, when was that said? Was that Saint Jose Marie Escriva who said that, or
Well,
was that someone else? I'm
it
sorry, I
came from
forgot.
it came from the letter of Diognetus, so it's the first century.
First century.
You know.
Interesting.
But
Wow,
but
I would
I'm
have.
trying to anticipate probably what you're thinking. I don't mean like you're going to be wearing halter tops and pajamas.
Well,
You
that's
know,
one aspect. I was
yeah.
thinking a lot of aspects. Swearing being a big one. Most of
Okay.
that,
Yes.
mostly it's at least. Well, it depends on what crowd you're in. I remember like 10, 15, something like that years ago, back when I was working in this deli in a grocery store. Like, of course, these were kids. So what did they want to do? They wanted to swear and have sex.
Mm-hmm.
And their conversation was all centered around that. Particularly this ex-Catholic coworker of mine, who was so upset that I wouldn't, that I reminded him of all the stuff he hated, even though I didn't breathe a word in proselytation. Well, maybe one or two things, but they were supposed to be more subtle. But
Mm-hmm.
just the fact that I wouldn't swear, and I wouldn't talk dirty, then they're just like, it's like, and I'm not saying I was a saint back then. I certainly wasn't, but I was like, I didn't see any point in doing those things, and I
Mm-hmm.
at least tried to keep up some semblance of, decorum.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but he was, yeah. So the kids definitely. Maybe when you get older, you grow out of that. I guess I don't know. I don't. But I don't know. I even had an older friend who was like, had a bit of a I could tell had a bit of a lust thing going on. So, and he
Mm-hmm.
was like elderly. So I guess those two things, just the profanity and the everything about sex. That's kind of two
Sure.
big things that I think that non-Christians are going to pick up on. Even like I have a friend. I've known people who sometimes are even Catholic, but sometimes it has the opposite effect. Like if they pick up that you don't swear, even if you don't like criticize them for swearing, they'll start to watch their language around you. They'll just be like, oh no. So it's kind of interesting. Of course, then there's some people like my ex-Catholic coworker who was so mad he tricked me into swearing in German one time.
Yeah.
So, but
Yeah. So I mean, just to kind of reiterate, kind of the point of that letter was that you'd have to. You don't. The emphasis was kind of a visual. You don't look different.
yeah.
You don't stand out. Not so much like because it also said the only thing that differentiates you is you don't sin. So
Mm,
insofar as your morality has been formed in such a way that profanity, your sensitivity to profanity, then
yeah.
yeah, I mean, don't be profane just because other people are profane. But
Mhm.
I think it's just saying don't go out of your way to be different looking,
Right. Don't be
as if to
different for the
say,
sake of being
yeah,
different, kind of thing.
yeah,
Don't be like, oh, I'm Catholic, so I have to like, go out of my way to be countercultural.
mm,
Of
eh,
course, I don't know where I stand in that sentiment. I mean, look at me. Well, I don't. I guess I'm not exactly typically. Like, I'm not garbed right now in like typical Catholic attire. Like I'm wearing a suit and tie. You would think that's trad. Oh, but I don't know if you can tell in the camera. It's my purple suit, and I've got a paisley gold vest.
mm,
So I'm like, I don't. I guess maybe I feel a little defensive when you say you shouldn't be like go out of your way to be different,
Yeah,
that's a very good.
but that's your
I
style, so that's different. You're not trying to be different. I don't think. I think you're finding
It's
your
true. I
your
just
identity.
yeah, I just kind of naturally grew up to be some kind of like weird artistic freak, So I mean,
Yeah,
look
I
at
know.
my
I
background
think it's
photo.
more. I think it's more like people who become traditionalists and then they abandon their old style of clothing because they have to fit in.
Yeah.
Right? They have to fit in and be like, I was involved with the TFP for a little bit, not really formally, and a
Hmm.
lot of their teaching from Plinio Correa de Oliveira is about ambiance and high culture,
Hmm.
right? And so a lot of it is you always wore suits.
Hmm.
Like everywhere you wore suits. So I kind of would joke with my close friends after we hang out with the FTFP. I'd say we go to the beach, but we'd have to make some swimsuits that are patterned that look
Yeah, yeah.
like suits. So we get like swimsuits, but it's or something like that. Like at some
Well,
point
that's going too far.
at some point it was a little extreme. Like I was wearing a suit everywhere.
Yeah.
And yeah, that was the style in the 1950s and 60s or whatever. But it's just like obviously, I don't dress like this all the time. I mean, even if I do, I don't wear a tie because it's hot and it's like uncomfortable. So,
Yeah, yeah.
times have
And
changed, right?
I don't wear this all day long too. Part of me would love to, but then
Mm,
part of me is like, nobody else does it. I don't want to like. I mean, there are occasions like where I'm like clearly representing my personal brand, or even in like just really want to class things up a bit, like podcasts like this. Like I'll wear it.
mm,
But um, and when I first got the suit, I was kind of like all like I was a bit insecure. I was like, oh, wearing a purple suit, but you know what? I'm gonna wear it
mm,
everybody because we should bring the suit back and all that sort of thing. And now I'm
right.
like, if it makes sense, I'll wear it. If it doesn't, I won't.
Yeah.
I have I have nice button down, short sleeve, business casual kind of attire. A couple purple shirts. I also have this really nice kind of like it's kind of like a more like turquoise, which is actually my tertiary brand color. I don't know if
Mm,
many people know because I just wear the purple and gold, but it's like dark turquoise is my tertiary color. So I've got that. I also have this like bright yellow Cuban shirt. So
a Cuban
uh,
bright yellow shirt. Okay.
yeah. I thought it was a darker yellow in the picture. I get so annoyed ordering clothes online because the pictures don't always match
Mm,
they're not as particular about their colors, I guess, as I am. So their color. Well, I'm not worried about color accuracy, but I'm worried about anyway. That's beside the point. Um, so going back to like the trad movement, like, do you think, and this is like a shameless tie-in to my theme here, do you think the trad movement is a sort of, particularly like the young Gen Z men of today, all becoming trad? Do you think it's kind of like a rebellion against what I call heartless secular materialist culture? Or is there something else going on? Like and I know we're
yeah.
coming up on 8:30 here, so I want to be mindful of your time, but maybe that might be a closing
Yeah.
discussion. Like why do people become trad? Particularly the young people of today.
I would. This is speculation because I don't think I've been in the trad movement very closely for 15 years,
Hmm.
so I have only seen them in passing. I haven't really engaged
Right.
with them. So my suspicion would be every generation has a rebellion phase, right? And their
Hmm.
rebellion looks very different by each generation. What are they reacting to? Well, they must be reacting to the status quo or the popular whatever, the whatever is maybe not popular, but whatever is the constricting thing. They feel like they're constricted by a culture that
Hmm.
preceded them, right? And so it makes sense in the 1960s and 70s, a very hyper moralistic kind of culture in America before that. And so they're like, okay, well, my resistance is to be like sexual revolution and this kind of music and whatever. And it's kind of flipped, it seems to me, right?
Yeah.
Because what is the popular culture is the liberal culture, it's the woke culture, it's the free sex kind of stuff, whatever it is. Are you hearing me? Like my microphone, I think went out, so
No,
I'm
no,
on
I can still hear you.
I'm an ambient sound now. But anyway, so I think maybe what they're reacting to is that chaos of libertine kind of
Mhm,
morality or whatever it is. And what's the opposite of that is traditionalism,
mhm,
is some form of either political conservatism or religious traditionalism, right? If they're already
mhm,
Catholic, and that's, in my opinion, I think that's the draw of these kind of allegedly hyper masculine figures like Fuentes and and what is it, that other guy, that's he's not like Muslim, but he's like always
Andrew Tate.
quoted. Yeah, somebody like that. I don't know much about him, but
I've heard bad things about him.
I learned some bit about him by what Fuentes thought about him, and they're very similar in different ways, right? They're abrasive, and they speak to whatever it is.
Mhm,
It's this pseudo masculinity, hyper masculinity. I feel like I feel like they're playing a part.
yeah.
There's a character. There's a character that they're playing, and it hits to the
LARPing,
core.
as Steve Skojec would say.
What's that?
LARPing, as Steve Skojec would
LARPing.
say.
Okay. What is LARPing? Does that mean
Role
you're
playing.
faking anything?
Role
Role playing.
playing.
Okay.
I think if I
So
if I
yeah.
understand right, that means basically like means role playing.
Okay. So I think I mean, the thing is, like, for those who are astute and not just falling for it, I think you look at that and it's like, but it doesn't seem genuine. It doesn't seem like, like, when I look at them, I don't think, oh, lumberjack, manly lumberjack type. That's like, I don't think these hyper masculine, supposedly people that are influencers could survive in the Wild West. You know what I mean? Like, we're all soft in different ways. Like,
Yeah.
a lot of my traditionalist Catholic folks, I'll chat with them. Like, Constantine, I made a joke one time, and he's an author, and he does podcasts and stuff like that from time to time. And there was like some meme about some hyper masculine thing in Catholicism. I was like, I don't think you and I, Constantine, were meant for those times. We weren't meant for the medieval times. We wouldn't do so
Yeah.
well, because I don't need to apologize for it. Sorry if I'm soft in the eyes of a lumberjack type Catholic,
Mhm.
or I was not social. I'm not going to go. I'm sorry. I'm not going to go and start a farm and raise.
Oh, the farm. Don't get me started on the farm
you
stuff.
know and if that's your calling, whatever, and you feel fulfilled by that, and doing that Catholic thing, great.
Uh-huh.
But to make it sound like you're less Catholic because you're not on that
Yeah.
bandwagon, and I don't want to go plant tomatoes and avocados, you know what I mean? Like,
Right.
and if the poop hits the fan at some point and we all need to farm again, all right, I'm going to take my fate.
Right.
And
Right.
I'll take my fate, but I just don't think it's a strange thing to go back 1,000 years, you know what I mean, in that sense. Like, we've progressed in medicine and philosophy and theology and all these other technologies and things. Why don't we Christianize the progress
Yeah.
rather than be afraid of it, and go back and living in tents? It doesn't
Well,
make sense to me.
here's my response to the whole left-right yardstick of morality being whether something is new or old. It's like, okay, you hate everything old, then you better not drink water because water is incredibly old. It doesn't go away. It's just like you drink it, it goes right back out again, back into the earth, and it comes back again. It's like it's one of the oldest things on the planet. Like, so you better not drink water if you think everything old is evil. Conversely, if you think everything new is evil, well, then you cannot use the wheel because the wheel was at one point in time new.
Mm-hmm.
A hoe, I'm sure, was a new invention at some point in time. My guess is Adam and Eve did not have gardening equipment even in the most rudimentary sense, that as after they left the garden. I doubt that one of the angels gave them farm equipment, said, "Here, use this." My guess is they had to like figure that out for themselves. So at
Mm,
one point, clothing was new. Like
yeah,
they didn't have clothing in the Garden of Eden. So yeah, by the converse takes, like, okay, if you think anything new is evil, well, everything, pretty much everything was new at one point in time. So I guess you're stuck there too. So but
yeah,
the whole go back thing, like, it the problem is, you go back to balance. I love what you say about balance. Some things like seem extreme, even if they're true, like no abortion for any reason whatsoever. I mean, that
mm,
might seem like an extreme take, but and that's why maybe people just need to like stop and think, because it's like, yes, I can see virtues in farming, but like, let's have you stopped and thought about if everybody was a farmer, and if you made farming equate holiness, like, well, is your parish priest going to have enough time to hear your confession, or give you last rites, because he has to go out and harvest his field, otherwise he's not going to eat in the wintertime? Is anybody going to build Notre Dame because, oh, we can't have people dedicated to the craft of architecture because they're busy farming
mm,
to take care of themselves, because that is the ultimate virtue? Does that mean God does not want beauty? Does he does not want man to subdue the earth? Or does he
mm,
just mean like literally like tilling? So
mm.
yeah, I mean, it's bred out of a reaction to, just, the liberal mentality. And that's the question I have for you is, how do we stop this pendulum? Like, you talk about the rebellion. One day it's like we're rebelling against traditionalist culture, and we have um, the the liberal sexual revolution, whatever mess of the 60s. But now it's like, oh, we've got that mess, and now let's go back to tradition. So how do you stop the flip-flopping, and how do you get sane, to use something that Chesterton might say?
That assumes I'm sane myself. So it's always the extremes. I was talking to this independent priest once upon a time, and I said the extreme right, the extremes are always the person on your right. And I was talking about religious
Yeah,
conservatism, and
yeah.
he laughed because he laughed because I think he knew what I was talking about. It was like it's like the FSSP folks that say, "Oh, well, I'm not extreme." It's those SSPX folks; they're a little extreme. And then you talk to the
Mhm.
SSPX folks, "Oh, we're not extreme." Those State of Acantis folks, they're the extreme ones. We're okay. And then
Mhm.
you talk to the State of Acantis. No, it's the
I
Diamond
mean,
Club. Those are the
you and
ones.
I, you and I are undoubtedly extreme to compared to like Nancy Pelosi. She's like, oh, you're I bet you the FBI thinks we're extreme. We're
Yeah,
probably on a list somewhere.
yeah. Everybody's in their own thing. They think that their brand of their brand of Catholicism is Catholicism.
Hmm.
And that makes sense to me. People think they're in the right. My opinion is that if you maybe change that way of thinking and not thinking that my way of Catholicism is the only way of Catholicism, is the only correct way of Catholicism, then you have a little bit more grace of the
Yeah.
people a little bit to your left and a little bit to your right. Now, if they're far left or far right, they're open to criticism because
Mhm.
you do see a little bit more of the extreme mentality, right? I mean, yes, I don't mean that in a in a in a relativistic way. There literally are extremes, that meaning that there is a spectrum.
Mhm.
You can there is no there is an end point on the right in religious Catholicism, right? There isn't something beyond stay at home sedevacantism,
Mhm.
right? They call them home aloners or the recusants. There is no beyond like the far extreme pro LGBTQ, all that stuff. Catholicism, right? Because beyond that edge is they're just atheists, or
Yeah.
beyond that edge they stop being Catholic. I mean, there's no,
Mhm.
those are the extremes I'm talking about in general.
Either
Um,
Protestant or atheist.
yeah. So okay, back to your question. In my opinion, I don't associate and I don't join movements anymore.
Mm.
Right.
Mhm.
You know, yeah, and even then, back in the days when I was influenced by Opus Dei, I never joined. I was never interested in joining Opus Dei. I was
Mhm.
interested in their spirituality. I'll take a little bit of that good stuff there. And then I knew some people who were like the tongue speaking, charismatics, and I was still friends with them. I wasn't into it. I never went to their things. I went to one prayer group and they freaked me out, so I stopped.
Mhm.
So, but yeah, because they were speaking in weird,
Oh
nobody can
no.
understand what they're saying. Yeah, they're all praying in all the tongues, and I prayed in Latin because I didn't want to feel left out. You know what I mean? And they didn't know any different, right? So I was like, okay, that's fine. That's good for you. That's good for you. And some people have their Marian apparitions. Some people have their end times prophecies.
Mhm.
Great, more power to you. But I'll be myself, and I'll spend a little bit of time with everybody.
Yeah.
So I get a little bit of perspective from everybody, but I don't spend enough time with any one group that I start thinking like them in a social I say in a sociology kind of way. It doesn't make sense. Like
Yeah.
you have group think, right?
Right.
And then when you have group think, then you stop thinking critically sometimes,
Critically.
I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
That's for
so
sure.
I'm wonderfully ignorant of a lot of things within certain subcultures of Catholicism. I'm
Mhm.
glad to be because you start, and then again it's like us and them. It's always us and them.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that's what a lot of these debates are. I have a lot of these Facebook friends that are in their one thing, and then they see that I agree with them with some things, and then I'm good friends with them in those days. But when I say something that's not within their gang speak, you
Yeah.
know what I mean? Their way of thinking, it's just like, why are you saying this? Why are you thinking that? Why are you interviewing Jerry Matitix? Why are you doing this? I'm like, because Jerry Matitix is a human being,
Yeah.
regardless if he's a sedevacantist, and I enjoy conversations with Jerry Matitix,
Yeah.
and he stretches my brain, and I learn a lot of Catholicism from him besides the sedevacantism. So
Mhm.
why are you supporting Robertson Jenis? He's this and he's a geocentrist. Well, same thing. He stretches my brain. He has a lot of things I learn about, and I happen to think, the geocentrism thing is it's very provocative, but it's also interesting and
Yeah.
compelling to me personally.
Yeah.
So, but some people will write me off just because of that. Like, never mind that I'm secularly educated and they think I am I'm valuable in other ways intellectually, and then all of a sudden, oh, you're a geocentrist, you're a young Earth creationist. Oh, and then they unfriend you. Like, why can't you have a conversation with me? Why can't
Don't
you?
feel bad. I ended up in the emergency room a month ago. And the next thing I know, I lost like one or two friends on Facebook. Like, what did I say? Was it that I was in the emergency room? Are they mad at that? Like, are they like anti infirmity or something? You know?
Oh, that's interesting. Oh, so they're anti like modern medicine or something. I don't know,
I
some
don't
weird
know. Well,
stuff.
I don't like modern medicine. I stay away from modern medicine as much as possible. But I ended up in the emergency room. It was kind of like I wasn't sure what was happening. I thought maybe I was dying. Well, and the nurse at my primary care doctor told me that's probably my first mistake. I said the magic words. Yeah, a little bit of like mild chest pain, tightness. Oh, well, you need to go to the emergency room and have an EKG. And of course, it came back clear.
It
So,
just makes sense. Better safe than sorry. So no.
well, yeah, and I was having some nasty other symptoms, and I was like, okay. But now we'll see if I have a big bill in the mail. Um,
Yikes. Okay.
so that's one of the reasons why you stay away from doctor. But now I'm actually started up with a nutritionist and a functional medicine uh,
Mm-hmm.
nurse um, practitioner. So I'm very excited about that. Um, so yeah. It's 8:40. Do you have to leave, or do you have some more time? I can probably go until about 9 or so.
That's fine. We could go 10 or 15 more minutes.
Okay. Cool. Cool. Um, so yeah, the question. Oh, I had an analogy I wanted to say. It's almost like the Catholic faith is like the Garden of Eden. You have so many different plants and trees and fruits to choose from, but there's just one that you can't do.
Mm.
And I think what happens is, obviously within all those groups, they all have their forbidden they probably have in some form some kind of forbidden fruit that they're like clinging to in some way. But even if they don't, I think their problem could be that they're just like restricting too much. They're calling some of those good fruits bad fruits.
Mm.
So for example, like, and maybe it's just because my big five test put me right down the middle. I'm equally high in orderliness and equally high in openness.
Mm.
You know,
Mm.
little hint, they're both very high. Um, one orderliness is predicts conservatism, and openness predicts liberalism. So, what was I gonna say? Oh, so maybe that's just me talking from my centrist point of view. Um,
Mhm.
is that I forgot what I was gonna say. What was I gonna say?
I think about forbidden fruit, right? That's how you started.
Yeah, we were talking about forbidden fruit. Oh, yeah. So I was going to mention, like, for example, the whole immigration thing. Like,
Mm. Mhm.
I mean, I will agree unequivocally that, yeah, if Biden and company were just bringing in illegals indiscriminately and trying to just, like, who knows what, for whatever purposes, ensure the Democratic Party is forever dominant, well, then obviously, yeah, I'm against that. And then and we're bringing in cartels and gangs and all sorts of other unsavory people, get rid of them immediately.
Mm.
But don't get rid of the 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 grandma from Mexico who, with her kids, maybe the cartel was making their lives miserable and they just wanted a new life in America. And maybe the son, the grandsons, maybe they all got good jobs in landscaping and they have a landscaping business and they don't do anything stupid. They don't go out and kill or rape or whatever you want. Maybe they're reasonably law-abiding citizens, except for the fact that they're legal. Well,
Mm.
my thought is, well, why not give somebody like that a 5-year visa? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
if at the end of 5 years they have not committed any violent crimes, well, then give them citizenship. And guess what? Congratulations. They're paying Social Security now. They're paying
Yeah.
taxes. Well, hopefully, anyway. I mean, yes, true. There is the right argument that, oh, well, it's going to like disrupt culture and all that sort of thing. It's like, well, that's kind of an American thing, isn't it? Like you had plenty of immigrants of different, and granted, they were all European, but they had different cultures, and they didn't always see eye to eye with each other. So it's like, I think you can handle a little bit. I mean, yes, truck loading hordes of them in is too much. And so, yeah, maybe put an end to the illegal immigration too, crack down on that, strengthen the border, all that sort of thing. But like the people who are already here, I mean, it would be kind of heartless to kick them out if they're not doing anything wrong other than they're just illegal. Maybe they're poor and they wanted a better life. Two, I can only imagine the amount of resources we're expending right now. Just get rid of them all. No, no, and get rid of them all, and then plus some who aren't actually illegal but look illegal and get caught up in the mix. Like, just get rid of them all. Like, I can only imagine the amount of resources that's taking up. I mean, maybe it's not as much as I think, but it just sounds like a massive operation, and it sounds like it would be very disruptive to economy as well. Because like you have a like a great, like a what do I say? You have like a vineyard in California, or you have like what do they grow out there? You would know better than me. Strawberry farm, and
Mhm.
guess what? Most of your people out picking the berries are illegals. It's like yeah, they shouldn't be here. I get that, but like they're here, and if you just get rid of all of them, like, well, what now? What are you going to do about the vacancies? Like, yeah, I guess if unemployment is as high as it's supposedly is, then the native people will have more job opportunities, and that's fair. That is kind of just. But I guess my point is with that long-winded explanation is like I don't see it as one or the other. I see it as okay, we have two truths to balance, and we have like yes, we have to take care of our own. If we let in just anybody from the third world, cartels and all, well, it's only a matter of time before they turn America into the third world. And it's like, well, now where are you going to go? You just wrecked the promised land, so you've got nowhere else in the world to go. So congratulations. But at the same time, it's like, well, but there are people in these countries that are suffering, and maybe they have a hope of a better life. It's like, I mean, ideally, I think what the solution would be, strengthen, have a strong border, keep out all the undesirables, but maybe make it a little easier for the legitimate people to come in. Because I don't know firsthand, but I have heard from people that the immigration process in the U.S. is quite a difficult one. I don't know if it's expensive. I don't know if you have to like pay money or anything. I don't know how that works, but so maybe like I don't know what the exact policy would be, but maybe like see if there's a way that you can make that process easier and more fair to people who want to come in, who just want who want to leave the violent cartels like Venezuela. Like if you've got innocent bystanders there, I don't know. It's a very complicated topic, and I guess I'm probably spitting out solutions that I have no right to spit out because I don't have the intel on it. But I guess my big point is that very frequently there are two opposing truths in the balance, and you get into big troubles when you say the other one is not actually true, it's false, this is the only truth. It's like justice and mercy. It's like there is no mercy, it's only justice. Or there is no justice, there's only mercy, there is no hell. It's like, yeah, well, look at the 20th century and Stalin and Hitler and all those people, and you look me in the eye and tell me there is no hell. Like we've already had it. So but then again, like there are plenty of beautiful things on earth, and look me in the eye and say there's no heaven and God does not have any kind of mercy. So and that the reason we throw them away is because it's hard. It's hard to walk a tightrope. It's very easy to fall off either one side or the other side. But either side you go, you fall off and you fall to your death. But if you walk that tightrope, that's why I think the Catholic faith is a really beautiful tightrope of all these different trees of good fruit. It's just that one forbidden fruit that like you can't go to. So anyway, I don't know if any of that made sense. That was all my introverted intuition, big picture. Ooh,
Yeah, no, it makes sense to me. I don't have strong opinions either way on immigrate. I mean, the law is the law.
Right.
So it's always interesting to find those videos from the Democrats years ago where they said something like, we need to have strong borders. Like that was the Democratic perspective.
Really?
Right. You could find one with like Obama. You could find one with Bill Clinton and all those folks, and they were said the same thing. And they're saying the same thing that the conservatives are saying right now. So what changed?
Yeah.
Right? What changed is that they were able to find some value to illegal aliens for their side, I guess you can say. So they changed their mind. Yes. So on the one hand, there's the law, and there's nothing wrong with the government to uphold the law as it is. So that's one hand. If you don't like it, then we need to change the laws and make that
right.
So, but that hasn't changed. So it's still be a violation of some law. On the flip side, there is this maybe unwritten like moral laws of like human dignity and
Hmm.
compassion and all this other stuff. um, Close the borders like you suggest, right? Or make it strengthen the borders so the bleed stops, right? But that doesn't mean that doesn't that should be priority first.
Yeah.
Remove all the violent criminals, strengthen the border so there's no more hole in the boat, I guess you could say,
Hmm.
and then figure out how to prioritize upholding the actual law.
Hmm.
Right. So maybe it's like those who have been here the last 5 years or the last 1 year. I don't know, whatever. I don't know what the solution is, but at least prioritize the ones that haven't set roots down. Those should be a
Yeah.
greater, those should at least be in the whole grand scheme of things. They're on the one hand, there's the ones who have been here for generations or whatever. They have
Right.
children and grandchildren and they pay their tax, whatever it is that they do. They have deeper roots and it's harder for to uproot them and then have them sent to a country they'd have no connection to for 20, 30
Yeah.
years versus the ones who have just gotten here a month ago or 6 months
Hmm.
ago or a year ago, whatever it
Right.
is. It just makes more sense that those folks are greater priority for deportation if you're going to do that
Hmm.
rather than the ones that have been here the longest.
Right.
But when I talk to conservative, it's like they can't get their mind outside of the way they think politically
Yeah.
and their group, that they won't even consider it. They would just go
Right.
straight into, I'm a patriot and I believe this and it's illegal and they shouldn't have been here. The whole thing, it's just the same thing.
Yeah.
It's just gang speak from your tribe, and you're
Yeah.
just parodying that. And it's my opinion because they all sound the same.
Yeah.
Rather than maybe thinking about it a little more critically and a little more nuanced.
Hmm.
But hey, whatever. We're probably going to lose a lot of friends as they get to this part of the video here. Uh, I
Yeah.
always say, I always say I'm always suspicious of those who are more Republican than they are Catholic.
Oh yeah.
And I don't mean that as necessarily a judgment. I just mean that they sound like they're more Republican secular than they are, virtuous Catholic,
Right.
because those principles seem to have a higher weight
Yeah.
than their spiritual speak. So, and if
My
they get
my
sensitive, that means it's a conviction, right? If they feel like, oh, are you talking about me? Well, probably I am. If you feel like my words ring
my
true.
unpopular opinion is that um, left and right politics should not interfere with your Catholicity. If you're going to call yourself Catholic, like, you're Catholic first. Your politics is second.
Right, right.
Like, do you want to? Well, think of it this way: do you want to spend eternity in heaven with Jesus, or do you want to spend eternity at the Republican National Convention, or eternity at the Democrat National Convention? Like, take your
they'll,
pick.
they'll say it's one and the same.
Oh, you're in for a big surprise.
It's the purgatory of the paradise.
Oh, there you go. There you go. So, well, Laurence, thank you so much for joining me on this inaugural official first episode of the Rise Above Heartless Materialism podcast. Any closing thoughts you want to leave us with? Any cool upcoming projects that you like to share with the viewers, or anything like that? Or
Yeah, my ADHD will give you five different things that I'll never finish. So I will just, the things that, but there is something that we discussed here, which I think would be an interesting work. It would be worthy of looking into, even if it wasn't like truly scientific. Is there a way to maybe create some kind of grid in the same way that Myers-Briggs can be mapped on a grid for the 16 personalities?
uh
Is there, what kind of personalities are there in Catholicism? Is there
Ooh,
such a thing as Catholic personality types? And it's not just psychology. I think it's like a sociological thing. There has to be
yeah.
characteristics of sociology in there. So that would be an interesting endeavor to try to,
I know. I know exactly who I'm going to ask to come up with that, and I think he would. I'll let you know if he does.
Okay, sounds good.
He's also he's the first person I learned about the cognitive functions and the deeper science behind Myers-Briggs. He's the first person who got me down that rabbit hole, and now like I'm just like I've learned so much that I'm like, you know what? I don't know what to make sense of anymore because there's so much there's so many different gurus out there online that it's like, well, do I go by this system? But this system over here says something different. It's just like with any human nature project, you've got, it's just like with medical opinions on coffee. Coffee will save your life. Coffee will kill you.
Yeah.
So
there's so many opinions out there. So you just, you do what you can.
We see through a glass darkly now. That's the plight of the human condition is, we all have, it's all, the truth we grab onto is shards of a beautiful stained glass window.
Mm-hmm.
Like we can never be completely sure what it is we're looking at, and we never have all the pieces.
Yeah, I think that's a maybe a healthy way of looking at things. Is like you're not so fixated or obsessed with finding the final answer now.
Yeah.
Or maybe even ever, right? I mean, even the spiritual works that talk about that, right? You're never going to know everything until, the side of the grave. So why,
St. Thomas Aquinas, most brilliant mind in the entire church, when he had a taste of heaven, he wanted to burn everything.
Yeah. It's all straw, right? He said something like
all
that.
Straw,
so,
yeah. It's all straw.
So yeah, in that same sense, it's like, we're always trying to find a better way of living, and hopefully it's guided by Catholic principles.
Amen to that. Amen.
So,
and then not just the Catholic principles we find most palatable. I think was it St. Francis de Sales, one of the saints, who said that it's like, we champion those virtues that come easiest to us, and then the ones that don't, we either like dismiss or demonize. He said something like that. I forget which saint it was, but I was like, yep, that is the quote for our modern times, because that is just going on everywhere.
Yeah, no, that's true. It's harder to, yeah. It would be interesting to see, like, the folks that fixate on the sins of others so much is probably because they struggle with that themselves the most.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's probably a topic for a whole different thing, because I had a really lengthy conversation with a good Catholic friend of mine, and he asked my opinion on something, and that was my explanation on the fly. Is that
Yeah.
I think when people are so upset with the woke that stay in the church and they don't get penalized, and not like the traditionalists, right, that take away their Latin masses, but over there they're like, like prideful in their and their lifestyles that are contrary to the faith.
Mhm.
And yet, right, I'm being vague intentionally here, but what I was sharing with my friend was like, I think the reason why we get upset is because we have our own moral struggles, and we've had our bouts with scrupulosity or whatever, and we feelings of unworthiness, or what we can never change, and all this other stuff. And because of our struggle, we see the other people, and we're like, the church is favoring. I mean, the church says they shouldn't be living that way, and they seem to be very welcome. Like,
They get a free pass and we don't.
It's a reaction. It's a reaction to that. Like, here I am struggling but what I'm saying is, I think the insidious thing about that is it makes us sound like the 6 a.m. Laborers who are talking to who are talking to the owner of the vineyard and saying, hey, those 3 p.m. Laborers only worked a couple of hours, and you're going to pay them salvation, the same wage as me. Right, that's what I sound like, and usually I use that now. I use that story to get us out of that kind of looking at other people, right? Because then it affects us.
Yeah,
they're just minding their own business, living their life, right? And they might be in the wrong morally or whatever, but it's bothering me, right? So, I like to remind myself of that story. I don't want to.
I was going to say
a 6 a.m. laborer, right?
Yeah, or you could also think of the elder brother in the story of the prodigal
Yeah,
son.
that's true. That is a good one too.
So in that particular case, you've got to wonder, are they like returning, or are they not? But it's hard to say based off one social media post what's going on. And I think that is another insidious thing about social media, is that you just see little snippets, and then your imagination fills in the entire story. And so, like, for example, the gay couple and the guy getting confirmed, and
Mm.
like we don't know the full story of that. I mean, it looks suspicious on the surface, and it could very well be suspicious, and it could very well be that, like, maybe the priest is just like, oh, that's fine if you want to continue on in that lifestyle. But maybe he's not. Maybe it's more like, it's like, yeah, you can't do that, but okay, you want to be the sponsor, that's fine. Maybe he's just like suffering the weeds to grow with the wheat for the time being, in hopes that you can eventually like fully convert them.
Mm.
But those are things we don't know, and we can't judge in little sound bites on social media. That's why whenever there's like news of current events and stuff like that, I try and tune it out as much as possible, because I don't want to react based on something that I don't fully understand. And I don't really want to take I don't really want to spend my life trying to fully understand those things, if that makes any sense.
Yep.
So it's just like, it is kind of, I take it with a grain of salt. It's like, yeah, okay, this is going on in the world, but I don't know the full picture. So whatever. But on that note, I do have to cut out. But again, thank you. We'll have to do this again sometime, maybe when both of us have more time. I feel like we could talk for hours. So,
Sure.
and you're wearing purple too, so you're in.
I'm good. I'm in the club.
Also, I should announce to the viewers, the reason I wear purple is because it's the color of mystery, ambition, the supernatural, the imagination. That's why I wear it, and it's also a really beautiful color, I know some people like say like it has feminine or LGBTQ connotations, and like that's not what I'm doing here. And it's not the Joker. It's not the Joker. I've got a friend out there who knows who he is. Who when I first got the suit, he's like, "Oh, you look like the Joker." It's like, so.
You have to have a green tie and
green vest, yeah. So.
Green vest.
All right. Well, thanks so much, Laurence.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Until next time.